Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Sunday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing wonderful out there tonight and having yourselves a fantastic ending to your weekend. I know for a lot of people that probably isn't very fantastic, but certainly hope you guys had a great weekend as we head off into another work week. And let me tell you, weather-wise, this will be one of the most active work weeks that we've seen in quite some time. So we're going to discuss it all in this video. We're going to give you the latest information on this major winter storm, this blizzard across the middle of the country, all the way into the Midwest, the Great Lakes region. We're going to pull up individual National Weather Service snowfall totals for certain areas, kind of like what we did for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast system. So we'll really be able to see a lot of towns and cities and some of these tabs that I pull up for you folks. So take advantage of the timestamps. They'll be with you guys. I heard in the comments a couple people say their timestamps weren't working for them. So I'll certainly double check on my end to make sure that they're for you folks. But we'll go over the central U.S. with this storm coming up starting tonight into tomorrow morning into, our Tuesday. We'll go over to central U.S., the eastern U.S., and then we'll take a peek on this storm system following right behind it that could bring some wild impacts also, could bring another major winter storm. In fact, it most likely will. We just got to figure out who will see it. Some of the same areas might see two winter storms in like a 4 or 5 day period. So pretty wild stuff this week. We got the severe weather threat to break down this video too. And then we'll give you some quick update information on this Arctic air mass that's on the way for a good portion of the country. This is going to throw a large portion of the western and central U.S. into the freezer, and then how far east does it make it? And I am starting to think we'll have higher chances for winter weather a little bit further south as we get a little bit deeper into the mid-month time frame, maybe the third, fourth week of January. So we'll speak a little bit on that and kind of take a look at the model guidance in the long range. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Thank y'all for the amazing support. I was able to catch up with all the YouTube comments from over the last 2 days. I think there was 400 or 500 comments, so you might have noticed that. Thank y'all for all the reports and all those good things, the prayer requests. I prayed over them, and I'm sure a lot of other people did too. And with that being said, if you folks got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can do it and others can do so too. Let's get rocking and rolling. So what's going on out there? Hey, it's pretty quiet out there right now, but of course it's not going to be very quiet over the next several days. The last little bit of this winter storm is, chugging on off into areas of Atlantic Canada, snowing pretty good in Nova Scotia out there tonight. Still snowing around the Boston area, Maine. But most of this is beginning to pull on out. We already have a little bit of light snow return starting to show up in Nebraska. Some of this, if not all of it, is probably not hitting the ground just in the form of virga, but we will start to see snowfall begin to really show up on radar here in the next several hours. But let me know if you're seeing anything out there in eastern Nebraska. But you got the snow on and off throughout the Rockies, just kind of scattered about, nothing too crazy at all. But folks, you look at the watches, warnings, and advisories from the National Weather Service. This is, wild. We told you it was about to get active, and all the stuff from the National Weather Service is showing that. Winter storm warnings in the pink, blizzard warnings in the red, which have expanded into western Kansas, kind of like how we thought it was going to. All these winter weather alerts will begin to expire throughout tonight until tomorrow morning in this area of the Northeast. Well, the Northeast. High wind warnings are up for western counties in New York, where we could have up to hurricane force winds from just this huge system that's going to swing in. We're going to get a lot of wind alerts. You're probably going to get some high wind warnings issued in the eastern U.S., at least high wind watches. I mean, there's a lot going on. Look at all these counties that have wind advisories. No doubt everybody in the eastern U.S. will at minimum have wind advisories. If not, high wind watches, high wind warnings. You got flood watches up for areas of the deep south, red flag warnings in southern sections of Texas. That's still, they've gotten a little bit dry over the last couple of weeks. Winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings reissued in the northern Rockies. And yes, those are blizzard warnings for the Cascades and the Olympic Mountains. So there is a lot going on, folks. Winter storm watches remain. There's still some questions for communities right up against the western shores of Lake Michigan. We'll talk about that in this video. But for you folks that live in the middle of the country, I think you'll really like this video. We're going to break this down pretty extensively. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at the latest HRRR model. It goes all the way 48 hours out, so this doesn't cover the entire length of the storm for some areas, but we're going to show what we do have. So we're starting off around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. If you're confused about what time frame we're at, look right here. This is in Eastern time, so back this up 1 hour because most of this entire area is in Central time. 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it's already snowing in sections of northeast Nebraska, southeast South Dakota, basically where Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota kind of all get really close to each other right here. Snow's already beginning to fall. A lot of snow expected in that area. As we're getting into Monday morning, look at all the precipitation that basically just spawns out of nowhere, almost. Line of storms making its way through North Texas. We'll talk more on that here in a second. Western Oklahoma. And look, you're starting to get a mix with this very heavy precipitation over Kansas. It's starting to switch from rain to snow just east of Dodge City, for example. It's snowing pretty good up here in Goodland, Kansas. I'm good for mixing a couple towns' names up in states. Snowing out in eastern Colorado. You got this area of snow up here. And you keep this going, and some of this really heavy rain switches to really heavy snow around 8, 9 a.m. tomorrow. This is when Kansas City could potentially pick up a few inches of snow, maybe more. But man, look, these colors are maxed out as far as the dark blues. This is very heavy snow falling in northern Kansas, southern Nebraska, starting to move and get closer to Omaha, Lincoln, all these areas right in here where we'll get a lot closer on as far as snowfall totals here in a second. You keep this going. Let's just take it all the way to about midday. Heavy snow begins, it's already falling in Kansas City, northwest Missouri, southwest Iowa, really snowing hard in pretty much all of central and eastern Nebraska. Snow starting to make it all the way up into central Minnesota at this point. Keep this going, just good old rain down here in Arkansas, Louisiana. But we'll talk more about this, severe weather threat here in a second. So I'm not meaning to leave you guys hanging in Louisiana. I will get closer to that severe weather threat. There'll be a tab up for that. But getting into tomorrow afternoon and evening, look at this heavy snow. You're trying to switch from heavy rain to heavy snow in like Columbia, Missouri. Definitely going to be snowing pretty good in the far northern counties, Missouri. Des Moines getting snow at this point. Still snowing back here in eastern Nebraska. Snowing pretty good in kind of the Sioux City region, Sioux Falls region of South Dakota. This continues, and then we start to get into tomorrow late evening, around, maybe around this time tomorrow evening. This is when heavy rain begins to switch to heavy snow. Could just start out as snow, like Rockford, Peoria. Heavy snow could potentially be falling based off the HRRR model. And you got an all-out winter storm ongoing. And you got to remember, back here where the snow's falling right in here in western Kansas tomorrow afternoon and evening, the winds are going to be blowing at about 40 to anywhere to 60 mile per hour wind gusts in these areas. So, when this is pulling out, this is when the winds are really going to pick up. So that's why you have blizzard warnings in these areas. Maybe not a ton of snow expected, but you got blizzard warnings up for these regions. But you keep this going. You get all the way till about the middle of the night tomorrow night. Heavy snow supposedly is going to move into Chicago. But I'm telling you, Chicago up to Milwaukee, that is, if you live right up against Lake Michigan, the National Weather Service explains it very well. You are going to have mixing issues due to the warm bodies of Lake Michigan, kind of creating almost a coastal boundary. Even, it's a lake, but it's almost like a coastal boundary. It's kind of like what Boston experienced for a period of time throughout the storm before finally that boundary collapsed and you switched to heavy, wet snow. You're going to deal with that. But could this boundary be overcome by just this heavy snow? The potential's there. The HRRR model not showing that boundary well. It just shows a lot of heavy snow over Milwaukee and Chicago. But I think you will struggle tomorrow night. But will you stay all snow? Will you stay mainly rain, just a little bit of snow? It's a tough one to figure out. But you're getting into Tuesday morning. Look at this heavy snow overspreading northern Indiana, southern Michigan, northern Ohio. Heavy snow falling. Where Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois meet right into here. You got snow starting to get up into southern sections of Wisconsin. You guys get, a good 5 to 8 inch snowfall from this. And, it discusses this very well. You're going to have multiple rounds. So this is kind of one round. Here comes another round right into here. I think St. Louis, you guys are going to stay mainly rain, probably 85% of the event, if not all of it. But as this thing's kind of pulling on out, this back end round right into here can be quite intense up here in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. Waking up Tuesday morning, I think at this point you're probably starting to see snow in Milwaukee, Chicago. Rockford, heavy snow, Madison, Janesville, Green Bay is getting all the way up to you folks. And yeah, it stops right here. It's as far out as we can go. But, you're watching this last little bit of feature right here where strong winds can be associated with a little bit of dry slot right in here. But, you could be ending this as a last kind of several hour period of snow Tuesday afternoon in this entire region right into here. And if you continue just to kind of look at the European model with this, and that's not what I wanted to look at here. And here it is, the last little bit pulling out. Could be a nice burst of snow behind this for Tuesday evening into Tuesday overnight as this is pulling out. And then we could have another clipper right behind it. So let's go on and zoom into individual regions. So stop the screen anytime you need to, because I'm not going to spend 5 minutes on each frame, but we'll take a broad look at each state first. Here's Kansas. As you can tell, the northern sections of Kansas seeing the most snow, several inches, a good, I would say 5 to 8 to 9 inch snowfall in these regions, but southern areas of Kansas, not as much. Southeast Colorado, going to get hit pretty good with several inches of snow. Same thing with the western panhandle of Oklahoma, a few inches of snow. Someone could sneak in 6 inches of snow in the far western county of the panhandle of Oklahoma. I zoomed in closer look at the National Weather Service here in Colorado for Colorado. 8 to 12 inches of snow expected in Springfield, Colorado. Kim, 8 to 12 inches of snow. Not really much for Denver, I don't think, with this. Woodward Park, 4 to 6 inches. It's very scattered about. So, freeze it here if you need to. It's probably kind of blurry on your screen. 3 to 4 inches in Lamar. What about the National Weather Service out of Goodland, Kansas? Going for 5 to 12 inches in Colby. You can't see this, I'll try to name out. But look how the wide variety in here. 1 to 6 inches of snow in Imperial. So it's a tough one in some areas. Scott City, 6 to 10 inches of snow. Wallace, 5 to 11 inches of snow. Goodland, anywhere from 4 inches to almost a foot of snow. Somewhere in between. It's tough. And here's a discussion talking about the blizzard conditions in these regions and kind of the timeline associated with it, talking about the miles per hour. You make your, here's another graphic. Well, actually, this is a graphic out of Dodge City. They don't have like a map for us. And stop it if you need to, but you're going to have to look really hard, but it names some towns in these areas and kind of the periods and when you'll get the snow. Same thing with winds. Max wind gusts in here are approaching 60 to 70 miles per hour with some of this winds. For example, you're going to pick up 3 to 4 inches of snow probably from, like 12 to 6 p.m. in Syracuse, Kansas. And then you'll be increasing winds anywhere from 50 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts. So it's a nice graphic out of this region. You look at the National Weather Service out of Topeka, Kansas. It circles this area. It's talking about how, the amounts can fluctuate. Topeka going for 3 to 7, Imperia anywhere from 1 to 6. I mean, it's a very wide variety here. Kansas City, anywhere, you're going to get a decent event from this. 3 to 7 inches of snow. St. Joseph, 4 to 8 inches of snow. Salina, 3 to 6 inches. And, I know that's kind of hard to see on the screen, but, probability of moderate impacts has that nice graphic up too. We go up to our folks in Nebraska. Central and especially eastern Nebraska is going to be a pretty big event for you folks. It's been a pretty hefty start to winter with you guys with the Christmas blizzard and then this one coming in. So, eastern Nebraska, good for a solid 6 to 9 inch snow event throughout these areas. So a pretty good hit from this. It looks like Omaha, a good 7 to 8 inches of snow. Lincoln, kind of the same thing. And, to kind of zoom into some of these areas, Omaha going for 6 to 11 inches of snow. Rain, snow mix possible, so you could mix with a little bit of rain down here, but Maryville, Missouri, 7 to 11 inches of snow. Grand Island, 6 to 9 inches. Kearney, 5 to 9. Sioux City, 5 to 9 inches of snow. So move over to Missouri. This is going to be a state where one half of the state's getting blasted by a winter storm. The lower half, not so much. Springfield going for maybe an inch or two of snow, if you're lucky. But, you get into the central portion of the state, it's tricky. It really is. Columbia, maybe 3 to 4 inches of snow. But these northern counties could get hit pretty good. St. Louis, maybe an inch if you're lucky. But, a closer look at the National Weather Service out of Kansas City, 3 to 7 inches, saying area of the greatest uncertainty is right into here. You go into Maryville, 7 to 11. Bethany, 7 to 11 inches. Kirksville, 7 to 12 inches of snow. It says probability, I don't even know what that is. It just has a percent chance of, that's just kind of weird. Anyways, let's keep rolling here. National Weather Service out of, What is it, St. Louis? Anywhere from 0 to 2 inches of snow in St. Louis. You head on up the road, this starts to turn to an all-out winter storm. But, I know this is probably kind of hard to see on the screen. Bowling Green, 2 to 6 inches. Moberly, 3 to 7. Quincy, a good 4 to 9 inch snowfall from this. All right, what about Iowa? I think Iowa could get hit pretty good with this. And I think, and I'm sorry to leave you folks out in Minnesota, I think southern sections of Minnesota good for a 2 to 5 inch snowfall event, especially southwest Minnesota. You folks could get anywhere from 6 to 9, 10 inches of snow. Southern Iowa and eastern Iowa, it's going to get slammed. This is going to be a good solid 8 to 13 inch snowfall event across this entire area, including the northwestern sections of Iowa. But everybody in Iowa is going to get snow from this. And, great, map from the National Weather Service in Des Moines. Des Moines going for 6 to 11 inches. Davenport, 9 to 14. 7 to 12 in Burlington. Cedar Rapids, 7 to 12. Dubuque, 7 to 12 inches of snow. So, freezing if you need to. Fort Dodge, 4 to 8. So everybody's getting a pretty decent snowfall from this. A major snowfall from this in eastern Iowa for sure. Taking a look at the Great Lakes region and just the upper Midwest, there's that heavier hit, but northern sections of, especially northwestern sections of Illinois and southern sections of Wisconsin, this is going to be a pretty substantial event for you folks. But if you look very closely right up against Lake Michigan, the totals dramatically go down. It's wild how this almost marine layer is setting up here. I think northern lower Michigan's good for a solid 6 to as much as 9 inch snowfall. I think you'll get accumulating snow up here in the UP of Michigan for sure, a several inch snowfall event. It gets kind of fuzzy here down here in Indiana where they're just not quite sure. I think you could get a front end thumping of several inches of snow right off the dot, but it quickly switches to rain. How long do you stay snow before switching to rain? It's a tough one. Detroit going for a few inches of snow. But a little bit closer look at some of these areas. The National Weather Service out of Lincoln, Illinois, it kind of sectioned it off, saying there's going to be multiple rounds. Monday night, Lincoln 3 to 4 inches, Peoria 4 to 6 inches. Tuesday, an additional 2 to 3 inches of snow in Peoria, and then maybe another 1 to 2 inches of snow in Peoria. But Bloomington 1 to 2 Tuesday night. It's all over the place. Bloomington 3 to 4, a little under an inch, and then another 1 to 2 inches of snow Tuesday night. Here's a nice breakdown for that area. And then we look at the National Weather Service out of Illinois. Okay, this graphic was from a few hours ago, but, this is from round number 1. But there's probably going to be another round behind this that they talk about. But Chicago, they're from the first round, they're not even going for 2 inches of snow. But, be careful what you hear about Chicago to Milwaukee and anybody in between. If you live up against the immediate shoreline, it's going to be a tough forecast in this area. This is just round number 1. So I think these areas, in Rockford are going to get a lot more snow than this. And here it is, chance for, 6 inches of snow or more. Sharp gradient they discussed right in here. But in this area right in here, Rockford, you got a high chance of that. It kind of just discusses the difficulties. I would go to the National Weather Service in Milwaukee and Chicago where they really discuss the difficulties in the forecast from Chicago to Milwaukee due to the warm waters off Lake Michigan. They really do. It's going to be a tricky one there. Speaking of the National Weather Service in Milwaukee, this is the chance to see 4 inches of snow. You pretty much got a sure bet across this entire region. Janesville, Milwaukee, even Milwaukee still has a 70% chance to see 4 inches of snow at least. It's when you get to the potential of seeing 8 inches of snow. Still over a 75% chance in this red area. Milwaukee, though, just a 3% chance of seeing that. So I think just those warm waters of Lake Michigan is going to affect things heavily there. National Weather Service out of Gaylord, probability of seeing 4 inches of snow, high. Probability of seeing 6 inches of snow, still high. A little bit lower in these orange areas. So, it has a nice graphic into here. There's a chance for some blizzard conditions in this area too. I think there's going to be on and off blizzard conditions even in areas that do not have blizzard warnings. They're just going to be more sporadic than the areas that do have those blizzard warnings. But, talking about, and I think I have this mixed up here. Talking about my folks, man, this is everywhere. Here we go. Right here, National Weather Service out of northern Indiana. Fort Wayne, 1 to 2 inches. This is an area that can change a lot, though, guys. But this is, northern Indiana, southern Michigan, areas of northwest Ohio. All right, so I do want to mention a little bit closer another graphic. I got this everywhere. I had the tabs mixed up, and between now and Wednesday evening, this is what it could potentially look like in this area. And you can tell, it dramatically cuts off. I think that there's just some question marks in this area. And this is the blend of all models, which isn't much different than the National Weather Service. But going forward, central to northern Indiana, a good 1 to 2 inch snowfall is the common theme across this area. So, winds, it's a serious thing across the high plains, folks. I mean, 60 to as much as 75 mile per hour wind gusts, extreme winds in southeast Wyoming. But I mean, you look at the predicted max wind gust, even in these areas right in here where it's going to be snowing very heavily, you're going to get sporadic 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts in this entire region in the Midwest where it's going to be snowing like 8-inch plus snowfalls out here. Very high winds down here in the southern plains. So, I mean, it's going to be windy everywhere. But this is why they have those blizzard conditions right in here with the highest chance of higher winds for a longer period of time. What about the eastern U.S. with this? We can look at the Euro, and here it comes. There's that period Tuesday morning where northern Indiana, northern Ohio, southern Michigan could get a quick few to maybe as much as several inches of snow. It depends on how long it stays snow. There's that icing showing up for maybe some of the southern and central Alps region. It won't stay ice for long. But you start to get deeper into Tuesday morning, hanging on the snow from northern Ohio, then you switch to rain. Could snow initially in like Erie, maybe up the Buffalo, northern PA, but even these areas go to rain as we get into Tuesday evening. And then it's really just heavy rain across the mid-Atlantic to southeast where we got storms, I-95 corridor, rain. Just inland starts off as a little bit of winter weather, Tuesday evening into Tuesday nights. Could get very heavy overnight in the interior sections of the Northeast. Heavy snow could fall, but even those areas could get several inches of snow and then eventually switch to rain. And then what we do watch for is this back-end precipitation across the Mid-South Ohio Valley. I think we'll get some back-end northwest flow behind this, and we'll probably sometime in the Wednesday morning have a lot of snow shower activity across this region. But this moves on through after that. And, the best thing to look at here still is the European ensemble. And there's that signal for heavy snow. That is not the right signal. This is the right signal. There's two storms. We'll talk about the next one here in a second. But here's that signal for heavy snow flying across the Midwest, the Great Lakes region, southern Ontario. And there's that solid signal in northern Ohio, even northern Indiana. And then, maybe a quick several inches of snow in the higher elevations of PA, northern sections of Pennsylvania, and then the interior sections of the Northeast. And there it is. I mean, that's a pretty solid signal for a good 6 to 12 inches of snow, at least initially. Some of these areas might not switch back to rain. We'll have to see what happens. But that's a strong signal. These winds, we'll just kind of section it off by wind gusts. You're starting off Monday afternoon, wind gusts at 30 to 45 miles per hour, Louisiana, Mississippi. Then look as it gets into the middle of the night, Monday night, tomorrow night. Look at these winds with a lot of rain falling, guys, gusting to 40 to 55 miles per hour. Look at these winds whipping in the higher elevations of the southern Alps, central Alps, where you have high wind warnings up. And then you keep this going, and there's a little bit of a weird gap in the National Weather Service in Atlanta where I guess they just haven't upgraded their wind graphics here. But the winds will be very strong down here as we're getting into Tuesday morning in North Florida, southern Georgia, central Georgia, getting into South Carolina, and there'll be a period of very strong winds. I think they'll cancel schools throughout the Carolinas, South Carolina, Georgia, northern Florida. I think they'll cancel school Tuesday. I think they'll at least have delays. And I know some people out west are probably thinking, why would they cancel schools? Well, it's a little bit different here in the Southeast. And even I'm 32 years old, and I don't remember them doing this. I don't ever remember them delaying school or releasing school early just for a threat of severe weather, but that's something they do now. But when you get winds over like 30 to 35 miles per hour for a consistent amount of time, kind of like same thing as a blizzard criteria winds, it causes issues with the buses. And they'll let school out early. And I think Tuesday could be a day where, it's kind of like one of those e-learning days where you do school from home. I could see that happening across areas of the Southeast Tuesday. Strong winds will be persistent throughout the day. Guys, I would prepare if you live in Buffalo to Rochester to like Watertown, Syracuse, this entire area in western New York. Tuesday evening into Tuesday night, even PA. There's going to be a period of very strong winds up in here. I'm talking about hurricane force winds are possible, wind gusts. Eastern North Carolina, especially Outer Banks, if you're out there, Tuesday evening, the winds are going to be whipping at tropical storm force conditions. You start to get into the Northeast, very strong winds. Mount Washington, you're probably going to get 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts up here. But Southern New England, Southeast Mass, 60 to 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. There's going to be chances of power outages with this event. No doubt about it. Saturated soils, heavy rain, snow melt because of all the snow you got on the ground up here. And then even the back end of this, very strong winds, guys. This is a big deal. And that rain threat, that flooding threat for tomorrow, is you got a 40% risk of flash flood guidance within 24 miles. A 40% chance of flash flood guidance being met within 25 miles in the given location in this red area. Yellow, same criteria, but it's at a 15% chance. So flash flooding is a big threat for tomorrow. And then I think this is going to increase for Tuesday. But there's a slight risk that goes from central Georgia all the way up to the southern New England region. And then right here in New Jersey, southeast and eastern PA, and then areas of New York, there is a moderate risk, which is that 40% risk of flooding. It's a big deal. And how much rain between now and Wednesday evening? A good bit. Anywhere from a swath of basically 2.5 to as much as maybe 4 to 5 inches of rain in these areas. All the way up the deep south to the eastern seaboard, folks. It's a big deal. The severe weather threat, I think, by far, is the biggest deal out of all of this. I think that, this is going to be a big deal. Not trying to freak anybody out, but, this is broken up into marginal, slight, enhanced, moderate, and high risk, level 1 through 5. The green, that's a marginal risk, level 1 out of 5. The slight, level 2 out of 5. And then level 3, the enhanced, level 3 out of 5. We now have an enhanced risk. This is different than what I told you, in this morning's video. They've already issued an enhanced risk. This includes all of southeast Louisiana, extreme southern sections of Mississippi, Alabama, and the western panhandle of Florida. What is this for? Well, unfortunately, there is a 10% risk of a tornado in this yellow area within 25 miles in any given location. Not only is there a 10% risk of a tornado, you see the black dashed lines going between or in the yellow area. That means there's a hatched risk, which means there's also a 10%, not added, just an additional, just another 10% risk of strong tornadoes, which is considered EF2 or higher. And the unfortunate thing about this is I really think this is going to be a nocturnal thing across these areas, meaning after the sun sets tomorrow. The wind threat, guys, just as big of a deal. Not only do you have a 30% risk of winds exceeding 65 miles per hour or higher in these regions, you also have a 10% risk of winds exceeding like hurricane force wind gusts in the hatched region, okay? So it's actually defined like this. In the red, 30% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher, which is 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then the hatch risk is a 10% risk of significant winds, which is winds exceeding 65 knots or higher, which is 65, 70, 74 miles per hour. So it's a big deal, folks. It really is. Hail threat won't be as big. Same thing. Enhanced risk in the orange down here in southeast Alabama, southwest Georgia, the panhandle of Florida. We'll see if this expands one way or the other. There is a slight risk all the way from the Outer Banks, all the way down to Orlando, all the way over to Tallahassee, up to Columbus. So that's level 2 out of 5. What is this for? Same deal, but we're only at day 3. So all we can show you is there's a 30% chance of severe weather. But there's probably going to be a 10% risk of a tornado issued in this, and then a 30% chance of winds, of high wind gusts. So closer look at this. We'll start off in Texas, starting off tomorrow morning. Line of storms making its way through. As we get into tomorrow afternoon, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we need to watch extreme eastern Texas, especially southeast Texas. You see these storms kind of are like semi-discrete in here. These could be dangerous. This is when the environment really starts to amp up. And then we watch these last little bit of storms that form tomorrow evening across the coastal regions of Texas. They will move through maybe from Corpus Christi all the way up to the Louisiana-Texas border, certainly including the Houston area. Could have some strong to severe storms tomorrow evening. And then maybe an additional round tries to form after that. This is the area where things really get cooking in a bad way. So we're starting off around midday tomorrow, about 12 o'clock lunchtime tomorrow across the deep south, all these states that you see here. a lot of heavy rain begins to make its way in. So you got kind of two things going on. You got a huge surge of moisture moving off the Gulf of Mexico into the deep south states down here. I mean, this could be producing very strong winds already. This is the area you keep your eye on right here. And at this point, the sun's already setting. It's around 7 to 8 p.m. These storms down here, just west of New Orleans, Baton Rouge, these have the opportunity to produce tornadoes and very strong winds. And even up here a little bit further north. Maybe not quite all the way up to Jackson, but certainly Hattiesburg, maybe up the Meridian. And it's as we start to get into like 10 to 11 p.m., you got to watch these cells too, about to move into the Panhandle of Florida. See this tilt that begins to get going. This line of storms could be producing embedded tornadoes. It's going to be raining all over the place. It's going to be dark. You're not going to be able to see a thing. It's kind of just one of those nights where you just want to stay up late. You might just want to stay up all night. You guys know how it is in the Deep South. At least have a way to get alerts, folks. Have it turned on your phone. But you start to get to about midnight, and then you start to get to about the wee hours in the morning, Tuesday morning, and this line of storms begins to get a move on. You see these little embedded little hooks, kidney beans, embedded in all this rain. You don't like to see this. And there's a ripe environment ahead of this line into this area right here that's building and moving and just feeding the ingredients for these strong storms. So, at this point, it's around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. This is blasting through the rest of southeast Louisiana, moving through Gulfport, about to knock on the doorstep of Mobile. As the sun's coming up, this line of storms is making its way through southern Alabama. And I mean, even up here, guys, the winds are ripping up here in North Georgia, Tennessee. It's just the very severe element of this is really down here. So you gone and moved to this frame, and we'll just kind of take a look at the NAM. You're waking up around 9, 8 a.m. Tuesday morning. There's a wicked line of storms making its way through southeast Alabama. It's basically working its way west to east throughout the Panhandle of Florida. And is any additional storms going to develop ahead of this line into this area? If they do, you're going to have a risk of widespread tornadoes into this area. But line of storms making its way through the Panhandle, through the entire state of Georgia Tuesday afternoon, even all the way up in the Greenville-Spartanburg area. And then this makes its way and tries to really get going again once it gets into central South Carolina, southeast Georgia. You can see how this line brightens up in that red again. And this line of storms could be very intense in eastern South Carolina Tuesday evening. And look at the snow trying to show up from northern Alabama behind this. I'll have to fine-tune that as we get. But I think the winds will be absolutely ripping for this entire area ahead of this line of storms as it makes its way through. So, updraft elasticity swath, we'll just take a look at this for now. But, where it shows these colors, that is where this particular run of the H-Sharp-Barrow model is liking the idea for the best rotation with these storms. So it really likes southern Alabama, the western panhandle of Florida, and then down here in Louisiana, and just along the Gulf coastline. It really likes those areas. The ingredients with this is the kinematic ingredients, the winds aloft. And come on, you're going to get in the moving for me? As we get this moving here comes this low-level jet. It really begins to build into this area. It's already cranking up across this highly favorable environment down here. In that purple area, that's a low-level jet. Winds about a mile above our heads, ripping at about interstate speed above our heads. So you keep this going. This low-level jet broadens even more as we're waking up Tuesday morning. And this is a low-level jet pushing, 75 to 85 knots. And some of these winds are going to mix at the surface, obviously, and that's why you're going to have the 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gust even ahead of this line. And there's that surface low up here. But, you keep this going. Southeast, look at this low-level jet over Georgia and the Carolinas, North Florida, as we're entering Tuesday about midday. The winds are going to be absolutely ripping across the Carolinas, even all the way up to the Delmarva area, Georgia and North Florida. This is a massive kinematic field that supports severe weather, especially where it overlaps the best dew points. And the best dew points are going to be confined up against probably the Gulf coastline. And here they go. Look at these dew points rising into the 60s in southeast Texas. Southern Louisiana, here it is, feeding into that line. It's a very small sector. These dew points are into the 60s. This is all stable, dry air up here. You keep this going. This blasts through southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, the Panhandle, of Florida. And look how these dew points in this warm front rises all the way up through Georgia and the Carolinas. Dew points could get all the way up into the low 60s, all the way up into Charlotte before the cold front crashes through. So this is going to feed an environment for severe weather. And this is what's concerning. This is what we kind of thought was going to happen, is the Cape levels would begin to uptick once we got in short-range model guides. And so they certainly have. Look at this Cape, well over 2,000 joules per kilogram in southeast Texas. Same thing with southern Louisiana. This isn't good, guys. I mean, there's going to be a lot of energy if this is right. Like, it's in the middle of the night. I mean, we've already showed you all the other ingredients. But you add in 1,500 to almost 2,000 joules per kilogram right up against the coastline. That's not good. And then this really kind of lets up as we get into Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. But, I mean, I could see this going moderate right into here. A level 4 out of 5 risk for really tomorrow evening, tomorrow night. This is the area I'm very concerned about right into here for our folks and our neighbors in the Deep South. So we'll continue to fine-tune that. We'll do it again tomorrow morning. There's another storm coming behind this, guys, and I think the severe element of this won't be as there, but there's still a lot of question marks with this. The latest Euro cranks this up Thursday evening. You got snow falling across the Midwest again, 995 low, scooting across Missouri, rain switching to snow. This is all rain for St. Louis. Starts out snow maybe in Chicago, goes to rain, stays snow in Milwaukee, back in moisture switches as the cold air catches up with this, switches it back to snow all the way as far south as northern Arkansas. And then the Euro really turns into a bigger event as you get further east and northeast. So that's one thing. Now you get the GFS, and here it comes. Same thing. Thursday afternoon, snows overspreading across the middle of the country. Thin slice. Thinking about pizza. I'm hungry. Haven't had pizza in a couple weeks, so I'm a big pizza guy. So I'm thinking about slices of pepperoni pizza. But northern Missouri, northern Illinois, northern Indiana. This run of the GFS Thursday night shows a thin layer of very heavy snow, but it breaks this off. Shows another short wave down here. Cold air sagging in, 993 low. Heavy snow event. Kind of a brief heavy snow event. Friday afternoon showing up for the GFS. Turns into snow all the way from Memphis, northern Mississippi. Heavy snow begins to fall in western Kentucky and the Boot Hill, Missouri. This is kind of new. The latest kind of trends today is that this is going to be more of a high-impact winter storm, maybe further east and maybe further south. But this continues, and this, tries to turn into a really big winter storm for the Ohio Valley. And there's just going to be multiple pieces of energy flying in behind this. The signal was very high on the European ensemble, even though it doesn't show as much for this area on the actual operational run. But the ensemble run, another nice signal if you're a winter weather fan, from eastern Kansas, eastern Nebraska, all the way to the Midwest, the Great Lakes region. And it really enhances once it gets into the Great Lakes and to the upper Midwest. Nice signal there. The eastern U.S., the European model for this storm, kind of looks very similar to the first storm that moves in earlier in the week. All rain for the Ohio Valley, mid-south, southeast. And big-time snow event for the Great Lakes region. And then another interior northeast kind of winter weather to rain event. But slows this low pressure down and really cranks up a major winter storm in Michigan and southern Ontario in these sections of the country Friday night and Saturday morning. So that's something we watch. A lot of energy flying around behind it. What about the signal on this? And I'm sorry, let's show you the GFS too. Let's back this up. What about the GFS with this storm system? It's a pretty significant event. The latest GFS, first one misses. Then here comes another round behind it and shows a major winter storm in areas of Kentucky, Ohio, southern Indiana, and it's just further south. It shows a big winter storm for like Buffalo, Cleveland, Detroit, and then it heads out. So what about the signal on this? European ensemble, here it comes. It's a very high signal for the Great Lakes region and upper Midwest. Not as good further south. And then that heads on out. But it's crazy. It's like you got this signal, and then you got the signal behind it, which could be even more of a significant event. We'll have to watch. But after that, folks, I mean, it doesn't look like it slows down. I mean, there goes our first system, European. Here comes our second system, late week into this weekend. And then the cold air starts to drop down, and then here comes another huge storm system early next week. And look, this is further south. Shows an ice storm for Arkansas, ice storm for southern Oklahoma, northern Texas. Big time winter storm right over the middle of the country again, but it cuts and just throws a massive winter storm across the same areas once again. The thing is what's going to happen? Are we going to get this Arctic air mass to really blast through the southeast? We have to if you want winter weather, or these systems are going to keep cutting. But in general, I still like after this time frame. I've said this many times, but I like the Martin Luther King onward week. I think Martin Luther King's on a Monday, and I like that day going forward for the southeast. I'm not going to call a winter storm in that period, but that's the period I like. But shows that. What about this GFS? Same thing. First system. Here comes the second system. Kind of broken up, weird looking kind of. Cold air drops down, very cold air. The country gets thrown into the country, thrown into the tundra, and it's wild. You're going to have a lot of snowpack on the ground with a lot of cold air moving over this snowpack, folks. So it's going to feel like winter in a lot of these areas that, you haven't felt like that the winter so far. But, you enter a more quieter period over the weekend, and then here's another big winter storm right here. And it's over areas of Missouri, northern Arkansas, and you keep this going. This turns into a big winter storm for the Mid-South, the Western Mid-South, the Western Deep South. And look at that. Latest GFS really drops a huge winter storm over these regions, and then eventually into the Northeast. And then it tries to crank up something right here and throws snow into eastern North Carolina. And then you keep on going, and here's a quick-hitting Clipper, very aggressive Clipper-looking event. Here's another one. And, there's just a lot we got to figure out going forward. There's a lot of energy out there. And here comes that Arctic air. Those colors right in here, Barney colors, that's temperatures 20 to 30 degrees below average in mid-January, folks. This is the country getting thrown into the tundra. And, this drops down very, very cold air. We get all the way to day 10, folks, and it's still sitting over the country. So it's coming, guys. And you look at temperatures. This is predicted lows in the blend of all models, which is going to be conservative. Thursday morning, there's those temperatures in the upper portion of the country dropping below zero. Getting to Friday morning, you get into Saturday morning. This coming Saturday morning, you're getting low temperatures that, are 15 to 20 to 25, maybe as much as 30 degrees below zero up here, guys. And single digits all the way into the middle of the country with snow on the ground in these areas from multiple winter storms moving through the area. And it moderates some, but very cold temperatures, folks, moving into the country. And it shows it right here, 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, well below average temperatures for the 13th to the 17th frame. Arctic air mass, Arctic outbreak. I'm sorry, I'm tired, guys. Moving into the country. And then you look at the 8 to 14 day outlook. This is shifting east now. Now just about all the eastern U.S. has a chance to see below average temperatures as we move from the 15th to the 21st. Folks, that's all I got. God bless all y'all. Have a great night, and I'll talk to you in the morning. Stay safe.